Hello, people. This is Nancy Ayana Wyatt. I'm an author, I'm a life coach, a writer and editor, holistic healer, small business consultant, and a bunch of things. But the reason for making this little video is to discuss my book, Three Hots and a Cot. These are stories of courage from people who are struggling with homelessness, addiction, and AIDS, and they are true stories of real people whom I really met. It is both a book and a performance playbook, meaning a playbook with line numbers and things for people either in classes or in theatrical groups who want to actually stage the production. So, the question is, have you or someone you know ever faced homelessness or addiction or AIDS? It can happen to anyone, as most Americans live from paycheck to paycheck, and we truly cannot handle a major emergency. Financial ruin leads to all kinds of coping behaviors, though, when people become destitute. And how does that happen? The reasons are like endless, ranging from house fires to acquiring some kind of terminal illness, and from being abandoned by your spouse to losing your job. So, Three Hots and a Cot explores issues of poverty, divorce, addiction, AIDS, sex trafficking, tests of faith, and many of the other dangers facing homeless children and adults. It sounds awful, but I'm going to show you in a minute that the people were and they are wonderful. So don't give up on me yet. Let's just keep going. Three Hots and a Cot is an expression that homeless people might use to refer to the endless hours they spend trying to reach an often unmet goal of finding food and shelter every single day, rain, shine, hot, cold. Shelters, prisons, and the military are the three most likely places to provide 3 hot meals and a cot on which to sleep. So all three of those kinds of organizations use that term. However, most shelters do not provide food, hot or cold, so people have to dumpster dive or go to soup kitchens. Homeless people usually are hungry people, and they might be in constant pain from muscle cramping and other physical symptoms brought about by poor diet, sleeplessness, illness, and adverse weather conditions. Again, it sounds depressing, but how depressing is it? We weren't depressed when we performed before Congress and got to sit with then Vice President Mr. Al Gore. So, Three Hots and a Cot does explore all those kinds of issues, but the people were truly beautiful. I met them at a shelter in Washington, D.C. for the most part. This is a shelter run by the Community for Creative Nonviolence, known as CCNV for short. There were 1,400 people in that one shelter. Not counting these kids. These kids came from a family shelter on New York Avenue in Washington, D.C., and that's a whole other subject. But back to the one where I did most of my work, one floor of that shelter was only for older men. Another floor was for women of all ages. Another floor was for people who had jobs. But the truth of the matter is that these days, wage jobs do not pay enough to pay for both food and rent. So even though those folks were required to have a job in order to stay in that place in the shelter, they couldn't afford their own homes. A different floor was only for people who were in recovery programs, alcoholics and addicts. And part of the deal for staying there was that you had to attend meetings of 12-step programs, and you had to stay clean or you were out. And it was from that last population where most, but not all, of the performers came whose stories are told in this book that we're discussing right now. I met all these people. I met more people in the streets who did not live in shelters. I learned about them. I love them and I miss them. So, also, if you think it's too scary or too depressing a topic, you can just see the reviews by enthusiastic readers. And they say the stories make them laugh and they make them cry, but they also give respect so that the people feel compassion and respect for people who are homeless rather than just judging them as they had in the future. So, how did all this begin? With Voices from the Streets. It was like a hot, sticky, muggy, ugly, typical August day, I think August, in Washington, D.C. And all I wanted to do was to deliver 5 car and truckloads of donations of clothes and toiletries and underwear and socks to the people in this shelter in Washington, D.C. But when I got there, it turned out that I got interested in the people and I started loving them and I started keep coming back, as they say in 12-step programs. So one day out of the blue, this lovely benefactress and playwright named Susie Goldwyn, whom you can see in front of you, the little blonde lady sitting on the floor with her arms outstretched, she asked me to become the producer and director of Voices from the Streets. This is her acting troupe, which she used. These are homeless people who were starring in her plays, things that she wrote that were kind of lilting and lovely and creative and marvelous. Everybody loved her. We had so much fun together. We all performed all over the Washington, D.C. metro area, and I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. Because then, for reasons I won't go into, I decided I would form my own acting troupe called Variety Pack because of all the unusual variety of people in it and the variety of things we were doing. And I did that so that we could perform scripts that I wrote of these folks' own stories, which were more about the nitty-gritty realities of life as a person facing homelessness, addiction, or AIDS, or whatever was the topic. And these are the same people who decided they wanted to join my troupe. So we performed for civic groups like governmental agencies, local and state, for higher education, for high schools and grade schools. We even went upon invitation to a university in Kansas City, Missouri. They paid for some of us to go out there and perform for them. So it was religious organizations that booked us, Christian, Jewish, others, and religious, civic, and governmental were the primary ones. We also were filmed by television, and we were filmed by the National Archives for a whole performance. One of the scripts went into the Congressional Record, and we were on some radio shows. We were almost in danger of getting famous because one of the cable shows that did us had to fill airtime at 24/7, you know. So all the people who get off work at midnight were watching this, and I would go places all over the DC metro area and people would have seen me on television with these ladies and gentlemen, and they already knew my name and everything else. It was very strange. So the truth of the matter is that some of the beloved friends in this group did die of AIDS or diabetes or other things that happen to people who don't get enough food or medicine or care. But I'm so proud all the rest of them were able to resume productive lives. To my knowledge, to this day, They have gone back to families or started new ones. They went back to school or started school over again. They got old jobs back or they started new jobs, and they've been a huge success. The additional beauty of them is that they devote their lives to helping other suffering addicts, people with who experienced homelessness and so forth. They truly have become their own kind of spiritual leaders in the communities of people who've suffered from these difficulties. So I love them and I'm so proud of them. Some of them were even still in touch on Facebook after all these years. In the process, I got a bunch of awards for the volunteerism, and they were some from television shows and business places. You can see how long ago it was because here I am getting the Governor's Gold Medal Award from Dr. Wilder. Governor Wilder was our leader in Virginia at that time. Also, I got a bunch of five-star reviews for my book that we're discussing, Three Hots and a Cot. And those reviews are on Amazon and Goodreads. But here's the truth. I have spent almost zero time trying to get anybody to buy this book, read the book, or review the book. So if you're so inclined as to buy it, read it, and write a review, post it for me, I would love that. I would also like to hear from you. Even if you didn't like it, I would like to know what you think. So that is appreciated. Who could actually be blessed by reading this book? Partly, I know the answer from all the various people we performed for. Rich people, poor people, people of all colors, religions, and every level of education have seen this book in action when we performed it. But also those people who've read it recently tell me that especially like first responders and everybody in the health provider fields, that includes emergency rooms and thermal unit operators. And let me stop for a minute because the truth is everyone who has spoken to me in person after reading my book has told me they think that everybody in the United States, if not the world, should read it because it helps people overcome their prejudices and their judgmentalism about people in these conditions. It helps them understand how it can happen to anybody and that folks are deserving of compassion and help, not prejudice and judgment. Moving right along, of course, in classes, sociology and psychology classes can use it to help people understand how societal groups and personal psychology works in these kinds of circumstances. And drama classes or community theatrical groups can buy the playbook, which I will license to them if they want to stage the production either for their families and communities or as part of their coursework. It's great because I told the stories as monologues or dramatic readings. Why did I do that? Because I might promise the Congress or Governor Wilder or somebody that we'll show up for a performance X months in advance. But when you are dealing with people who are homeless or have addictions or are extremely ill, you never know who's going to actually show up. So by putting them into dramatic readings, each of us could tell the stories of everyone else, if necessary, by reading the story, as opposed to having to have only the original person whose story it was do the telling. It's also great because, like, if you're using it as a civic group, nonprofits, and you're trying to arrange awareness, or you have a conference and you only have 5 minutes for somebody to say something about it, you can use just one script for that purpose. But if you want to do the whole production, then you can have a whole theater and a stage, very simple staging. All you really need is a podium, and not even that if it's a small venue. So it's just got all kinds of uses for raising awareness, and we used it to help those kinds of groups raise funds. And then it's just plain for people who simply want to learn and understand. particularly if they have a family member or relative whom they've seen go into these circumstances and they just don't get it. This will help you get it. So, my motto as the owner of My Persuasive Presentations, which is an LLC, is do it the right way. Let my fingers do your talking. And I say that because, among other things, I do business writing and technical writing and poetry and all kinds of things. But I also wanted to do some more of these monologues, like for veterans who came back from Iraq or Afghanistan or who are suffering from either PTSD or physical injuries. I wanted to be able to tell their stories through their own viewpoints, or even to do some more stories about addiction, about people who are suffering through the opioid epidemic. So if you have that kind of interest, I can be booked. You can contact me on my email, same as the company name, mypersuasivepresentations@gmail.com. The website is, surprise, it is mypersuasivepresentations.com. But I also do holistic healing, and that holistic healing website is called https://www.getwell.guru. Each of those websites has a page. If you look at the menu, there should be a tab that tells you where you can find me on social media. I have several Facebook pages and 2 Twitter pages. The personal pages on Facebook and Twitter are places where I do discuss social justice issues, or I should say social injustice issues, and politics. But the business pages don't have that. They're clean, you're safe, it's okay, you can go there, and I won't talk about politics. I'm also on LinkedIn and Pinterest and Instagram. I'm having a little difficulty with Instagram and Pinterest at the moment being in March of 2020. So don't judge me by what's there. Go instead to my web pages, which also actually are always under construction because I keep adding new things and new products and new services. Anyway, join me. I hope you will read my book. I hope you will review it. Whether you like it or not, let me know what you think. Thank you so very much. Bye.